we're going to live for so much longer. Do you think there's going to be any issues? What if I actually do end up wanting to replace some of the plates or take them out?
So the thing is, there's a perfect amount of integration and unintegration. Everybody has this idea that the more integration, the better. So,
Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakach, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone. Salutations select out there from the sheep of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the Heavenly Father, which the world ignorantly calls God. Ba'ashem means in the name of. Yahushai is the true name of the Son, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. His true name is Yahushai. And once again, Lord willing, this is an edifying lesson. And I'm going to be speaking about, vanity of vanities, right? And basically, this, just all this vanity that you're seeing, specifically with this trend that's been going around. It's called the looks maxing trend. Whatever you want to call it, self-improvement, looks maxing, looks maximizing. Now, these things, they're not a bad thing in particular. They're not bad, but, it's, you see an example with a lot of people, it often goes, too far, and you can't be distracted by these things, right? And, when I was a bit younger, right, I was often pretty influenced by these types of, trends, these different things, and then you start getting, obsessed with all these little things, how your face looks like, how your, body looks like, or, your proportions of your body, and, where you have, et cetera, right? And those are things that, you shouldn't be too concerned about. Yeah, there's an interruption. You shouldn't be concerned about these certain things, especially if a lot of them are out of your control, right? And even if it is in your control, we don't really have time to be worrying about shit like this. Or you could end up like this guy that I showed in the example of the video, and the dude, he wasn't bad looking or anything. Bro, just, you see these people, they start changing the color of their eyes, start changing their height, start changing their, clavicles and their shoulders, and getting implants with their, putting oil in their body and injecting plastic in their body, etc. And, at that point it becomes like an idol in a way, and a vanity, and it's a demonic thing, right? And now the first precept, right? This is the book of Ecclesiastes 1 and 2, and it says, "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all toil? All the toil at which he toils under the sun." And ultimately, right, this King Solomon at the end of his life, he had everything, man. He had, he had all the riches in the world. He even had gold teeth, and basically, he had, all these different things, man. And ultimately, he's still, at the end of the day, the only thing that was, profitable was the wisdom that he had, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures, right? Because the rest of this shit you can't even take with you, bro. You can't even take with you, and it's gonna be burned, including what what you have on this side, right? All your accomplishments, all this nonsense that the world tells you it's important. It really isn't. And basically, right? A lot of these people, they think that if they do this or get this certain appearance, their life is going to be better. But at the end of the story, man, it's really just vain. Okay. Now, though, there's balance to things, of course. It's profitable to exercise, be healthy. But then these people, it starts off with being healthy, whatever, and they maybe just want to be more, have more more physically, get physically in better shape or whatever. And then basically it ends up being, end up leading down this rabbit hole. Next thing you know, these people start, worrying about, the, exact measurement of their face, and, their jaw needs to be this big, right? And ultimately this is a demon, it's a distraction. Because ultimately, first of all, only the Lord is really in control of all these things. And second of all, this shit could make you distracted from what's really important. About it, because you see this thing. Even I saw this one guy. I forgot who he was, but what was his name? Khalid, something like that. I remember this one Jake. He changed his eye color. He had brown eyes. He changed his eyes to blue, and this shit is just just an example, man. What's the other guy's name? Cali Muscle, that guy too. There was another guy though. I forgot his name. He basically, two Jakes I've seen. They basically changed their eyes. It was a green or brown to green or whatever, right? It just becomes vain, bro. Because you see these people, they're trying to look more like the white man. You're trying to look like Esau. Right? You saw this another girl named her name was something. I forgot her name. Brooke something. You can look her up. She's trying to look like the human Barbie. She's a Jake. She literally bleached her skin to be white. Okay, this shit's not fucking normal. Ultimately she ended up looking bugged out. She ended up looking like those people from that one movie, White Girls, I think it was called. Just madness, bro. Okay, madness, man. You were not supposed to be dwelling amongst these things, bro. It becomes an obsession and it goes out of control. When I was a lot younger, myself included, I used to be, so focused on all these things, bro. And it's not important, okay? It's not important, because what happens is then you start losing focus on this truth and the scriptures, and that time you could have spent on the scriptures and edifying yourself or edifying a brother. You basically spend on some bullshit. And I have another precept, Matthew verses 6 and 27. Which of you, by taking thought, could add 1 cubit unto his stature? And ultimately, only the Lord, He's in control of these things, right? So when you worried about, if you're not going to be tall enough to go into the NBA, or, if you have this shape of your eyes, this thing on your jaw, or, you have this many abdominals, or whatever you call it. You start obsessing over these things. Ultimately, the Lord, He's in control of those things, what happens to you, right? And you start obsessing over these things. It's not profitable. You want to take care of yourself to the best of your ability. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But then you start going like the examples here. You start seeing these dudes, bug out. Now they start trying to, they start just looking all, just like crackheads. They look worse than, often look worse than before. Another thing is, these things are, some things are lawful, but they're not expedient, right? Let's bring this out, because you can, these things are, there's nothing wrong with taking care of your health and trying to improve yourself, but to what extent are these people willing to go? Then it becomes, it's not, it just is, and during this time period, it's not something you should be doing. Okay? You should be gathering wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The Lord said, if you love me, feed my sheep. And that's what the Lord, Yahweh commanded us to do. He didn't command us to do all these other things, man. To join the NBA, or to, be superstars or whatever. Now the Lord, he's gonna give us those spiritual powers, right? Lord willing, we are those men, right? He's gonna give us new bodies, okay? So fuck with all this other shit that they tell you need to do, or you need to look a certain way. That's just bullshit, man. Because what we look like right now is not even how we're supposed to look like yet. The Lord is going to elevate his men. We're going to be transformed, and he's going to give us spiritual powers. So fuck what these people have. All right, but this is the book of 1 Corinthians 10, verses 23. It says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things do not edify. Salakia, let me read that again. All things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things do not edify. Right? So, you want to be whatever it is, man. You might want X, Y, and Z certain job, or you might want to accomplish certain thing, or whatever. Some of these things are lawful, but they're not expedient, bro. Okay? Ultimately, they're not profitable. Okay? And the scriptures say what bodily exercise profiteth little, meaning what it has a profit to it, right? But it's not as profitable as these scriptures. Okay? Not as profitable as this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. These things come first, right? But you can't let these things distract you, because I know certain brothers, certain individuals, they might think they're missing out on something, or if they don't look a certain way or whatever. But ultimately, man, the Lord, he's going to transform our bodies, okay? That was written. Yeah, this is the book of 1 Corinthians 15, verse 52. It says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. And basically that is pursuant to those spiritual bodies, okay, that the Lord is going to give us, okay? Lord willing, we are those men. Certain brothers having dreams of spiritual powers, being able to teleport, being able to shoot lasers, move things, turn invisible, okay? Not to mention be, 8 feet tall, with Pringles cans full of baby juice, if you know what I'm talking about. Have super strength, shoot flames out of our eyes, right? Change the elements, and being able to never sin again and have the laws written in our hearts. All these things are coming for the men of the Lord. All right, so doesn't matter what the fuck these people have, man. Fuck what these people have, bro. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim, Rakak Wadash, and double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone. Shalom.